Common Stack user stories. What a beautiful doc.
So
Wow,
this
thank
is
you for that.
basically, I think, more of a formal user story definition.
Mhm.
I don't know. I guess that's kind of the ultimate outcome that we want from a meeting like this. But I think it would probably be useful to just walk through, a user making use of the common stack infrastructure, define sort of the different roles they can take,
Mhm.
and then kind of build this narrative around it so we can understand, what actions are available, what, how the user needs to interact with this system. Do you think that would be the most useful spot on it?
Yes, like a format that I do in my experience works pretty well is sort of like a third-party observer that sort of looks at that user that actually is using the app and just describes what he sees. So what happens. It's more like a real story that you write out. Um, so in the sense like this is Jeff. Jeff has found out about the common stack and now he's going to try it out. He has seen that there's like this simulation tool, and how he now he first goes to the simulation tool. And then based on this kind of story that you're telling, it's pretty easy to say, okay, like Jeff needs, I don't know, maybe an onboarding screen. Like in our case, it won't be an onboarding screen is probably not what we need. But so, for example, we can derive a user story to say like, okay, uh, maybe if the narrative goes further, like Jeff sees it, he can like create a simulation for a bonding curve, for example. And then we know, okay, I need a screen that has this bonding curve, and we can discuss about like which parameters does it need, what output will it generate. Uh, does that make sense?
Yeah,
And then
Yeah.
so
exactly.
in the end, it will contain these different actors, because you just mentioned Jeff, and then later on it can be someone else, like Sponnet or whatever avatar you take for it, um, also visits it, and maybe wants to see the work of Jeff, or maybe Jeff can share his simulation with me, for example. And so therefore, and there from that you can derive those other functional user stories. And creating that sort of walkthrough of the app, I think it's pretty easy to do right now in this co-creation. And then later on, I could derive these more tangible user stories from it. And then I think those are things that can go into GitHub issues, and those can be estimated and so forth. That could be a suggestion.
Okay, so you're saying that we just kind of talk it through right now, right? That's what I'm hearing?
That's what I would propose. And then as we are talking about it, someone just takes notes and just writes down the story, and like each sort of paragraph of the story or episode, if you want, can become user stories.
Okay, sounds
Yeah.
good. Uh, can we can we identify the different actors that we would want to have,
Hmm.
and maybe actors that we don't want to have? For instance, one that I think we could probably skip is the proposer. Um, like I think it's a very useful actor, but like they would be making proposals in the Give It app and then it being added and all of that. I think that we can probably gloss over that and
Hmm.
not actually include it in our scope. What do you guys think?
Yeah, just for my clarification, Griff, because the walkthrough or the user journey to when they describe right now, is it the user journey of someone visiting an app that allows him to do a simulation of the common stack, or is this really like a user story or walkthrough of a user that's actually going to use sort of the final product, if that's even defined already what it is, the final product in a sense? Because if you talk about proposer, that's really an actor in the final product, in my opinion. So are we talking about the simulation, like the Zargam simulation that needs a front end, or are we talking about the actual product?
Well, what do you think, Jeff?
Sorry, I was just reading through some other actor notes I had. Can you repeat that
Okay.
question?
Well, I can repeat it really quickly. Just like, are we doing this as like, hey, we're proposing, or sorry, this is a model for the actual use, or are we using this as a model for actually simulating how to create the common stack? You know, like, are we modeling
Um,
the use of the common stack, or are we modeling the development of the common stack?
I mean, I feel like for this call at least, we should focus on the functionality that we'll need to build into the POC. So that will be more. I mean, I guess we won't be looking at making proposals within the POC. We're looking at a user walking in and being able to simulate various parameters. So maybe we start there. And I mean, I feel like there will be other roles that need to be defined and fleshed out fully for the full common stack. But do we start with this call with the POC and the SimCAD backend?
Mm.
Are those the roles
Yeah,
we should start with for this call?
Yeah, I think that
yeah,
makes the
yeah,
most sense as well.
yeah. And so, are you saying that we will use this? I mean, like at least the way I imagine using this is more about like, oh, hey, Simon, let me show you what this system looks like. You know, so you can click through and see what we're trying to do, uh, and less about using CAD for like modeling. You know, I mean, I don't know. That was kind of my thought on it. But if it's easier to do it like, here's CAD, and let us show you how we're going to design it. Like I don't know that I now I better understand what you're saying, Spawn, about this. This is a very important decision. Like, are we going to use the POC to show people how the token bonding curve will work and how conviction voting will work? Or are we going to use the POC to show people how CAD will work? Right?
Yeah, of course. I think they're both like closely related in the sense that the simulations that I've seen so far, they all are related to how the common stack will work in the end. So, but maybe from my point of view, like an ideal user journey might exactly be like Simon is has heard about the common stack and has heard about the possibilities. Now he's about to find out what it actually can do. So he goes to this website that he has received, and how now he sees like the possibility to simulate several scenarios. And like first thing he can simulate is, for example, the token bonding curve, and then you go on. So I think for describing a user journey for doing that simulation, I think that would make a lot of sense to do it like that. And I think it's also the most tangible because if we would be discussing now how the whole POC would look, I'm still a little bit in sort of a gray zone how that will play out. I think it's more tangible now to do that simulation uh, user story, and then we can link it up. Like in practice, we could link it up to the CatCats API that's exposed right now, and like create that simulation. I think once we have that, then we're already one step ahead um, of going into defining what the actual POC will be like, because the simulation will show us exactly what values we will need, what parameters will come out, what sort of the desired output will be. And I think the one of the goals of that simulation is to actually uh, sort of explain the narrative using an example or using several examples. And in an ideal scenario, you can share these examples with each other, or even if you create like another simulation, maybe send it through a link to someone else, like with all those parameters already filled in, or maybe the output of your simulation, things like that. That's what I'm thinking of right now.
Okay. Um,
Cool.
that sounds good to me. I mean, basically to me that says that we're selling our design work, which is really what people are buying. So like it makes sense from that point of view,
Yeah.
um but and hopefully as a side benefit, they will see and get to kind of interact with the bonding curve, right?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's yeah, exactly. So maybe we can just get started by just trying to tell that story.
Okay.
And yeah, so I don't know. Do you want me to take the lead on that, Jeff, and then you sort of help out on like aligning it with your narrative? That
For
work?
sure. Yeah, sounds great.
Yeah. So just shall I go? This is a pretty long document already. And this is really formal. Do you want me to start underneath the document there and just sort like a fresh page and
Yeah,
start typing
sounds
there?
great. Sounds
So
good.
let's call it. So I'm just gonna write it down like in an episode. Like episode 1 is like Simon. You can use that as an avatar. Uh, discovers common stack demo simulation. So like I'm just gonna start typing and like feel free
Well, if
to add.
Yeah.
if you want to talk, I can try to take notes and just type after you say it.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, so I would really start from like the third person. Like Simon has heard about this thing called Common Stack. I don't know. Maybe you read a Medium post about it. I was introduced to it.
Yeah.
From Medium, and sees a link to a simulation tool, so he decides to try it out.
And what does he see? He sees the option to buy into the open phase, maybe, or is he going to set parameters? I guess first.
And what's that latest thing? To repeat that?
Well, what's the first screen he sees?
Yeah. Yeah, maybe. So the first screen maybe shows him a few like predefined scenarios that he can just watch, and then in a later stage, like underneath these predefined simulations, is like a button, do your own simulation or create your own simulation, something like that. But here I would really like go for like some sort of a compelling story, because like these spectators, they want to know what happens to Simon, so he to allow them to create the simulations, right? And then maybe like now Simon decides to click on the first simulation, because since he doesn't know or understand the system yet, he decides to click on the first simulation and have a look. Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, so what does the first predefined simulation show him? Sort of the basic parameters of the curve and of the system. Are we talking just about the bonding curve, or are we talking about like conviction voting, like tied into that as well? I guess it'll all
Yeah, I mean,
be tied in
anything
the
goes, because there are also simulations about these that alpha parameter and so forth. So let's just try to include as much as possible. It makes sense, of course, in here. So in season 1 ability parameters.
Yeah, I mean, I think starting with the token bonding curve is what most people would want to see.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
sort of this link or this synchronization I'm looking for is about that, and I'm expecting some input from you, Jeff, in the sense that what do you want to convey to the users? Do you want to show them like this is mechanically how it works, or uh, that's one thing, and I can try to explain that, but I think it's also important to have like this supporting. Story around it, because like the only thing we can show are some grabs and some nice colors and some fade overs in going from green to red, but behind those numbers is like a goal that you want to achieve. Simon doesn't want to see red and green stuff. No, he wants to achieve something. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're typing here, Griff, like he wants to build an economy around beautiful graffiti, for example. That maybe the red and the
Yeah.
green comes into play anyway. But
Yeah, for sure. So I guess, yeah, the question, or I mean, we can have multiple examples, but I guess it's good to find an example that can prove out all of these various roles in that economy. So I mean, one of our like kind of go-to examples has been this trash cleanup. Is that
Mhm.
something? Is that like an example that would carry through well, that we can kind of give an example for all these various roles and actions available? Is that kind of, so Simon looks at the simulation, he sees some of the basic parameters that define that system. Um,
So I'm gonna go say more specific and say we just start out with the token bonding curve system and start defining those parameters.
Yeah, and can we explain here what for him in the context what he wants to achieve? What does that mean? That token bonding curve? Do you want to also include that in the simulation, or do we assume that people already know? Yeah, sort of what that means. Because if we're gonna describe it the way you are doing it right now, Griff, then I think it's gonna be a very like technical approach, which is not bad. Um, but it sort of doesn't really give a lot of input about the narrative. So what is Simon doesn't want to see P0 and P1, so to speak. He wants to build an economy around beautiful graffiti, and then where's the link between that goal that he wants to achieve and what he's gonna see in that simulation? I'm gonna try to put myself back inside because it's getting pretty noisy here.
Yeah,
Just a sec.
yeah. I mean, I think we could spice it up as we go for sure. I mean, I don't know. I don't feel like trying to. I feel like trying to get creative in the middle of this might just slow us down, because there'll be a lot of like, oh, he could be doing graffiti, or maybe we want to do it about ending plutocracy, or one person, one vote, decentralized governance models, or blah blah blah. Like we could just dream all day, but like I feel like if we stay if we kind of lean towards the more technical side, then we'll be more likely to end up with scope by the end of this.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree. No, let's say yeah, sure, and we can add more fluff later on if we want. It makes sense.
yeah.
So we can first let's take a look.
I think that's all that's needed there.
So click on the first predefined simulation, take a look. Okay, perfect, yeah, perfect. As we see this. Yeah. Okay, and then next maybe, so these are the parameters that he sees, and then I think somewhere we should say, like, okay, Simon, because what is he doing now? He clicks on the predefined simulations in the parameters.
I do not know how to define kappa. I don't know if that's right.
That's the hard one. Kappa is some ratio between deep dive.
It's like S to the power of kappa over R, you know?
Yeah. Isn't there a space kappa equals kappa equals P1 over P0 times 1 minus theta.
That's interesting. I always thought it was S to the kappa over R, but maybe it's both.
Yeah, I think it's both.
Okay, so the details of this curve aside, so what does he see? So then he sees the bonding curve there. So and that's like a pre-calculated thing, which is because it's a predefined simulation he's looking at. What do we want him to know about or to learn about this? So do you imagine that there's some sort of like an explanation underneath it? Like here you see like a bonding curve and like with some explanation there. I mean, that's something you could add in these predefined simulations. Or do we want to have like mouse overs on that curve itself that sort of just show some values? Or do you have any ideas on how far you guys want to go with that? Because if it's just displaying the hatching and the token bonding curve, that's pretty simple to do. But does that really tell a story? How can we make it resonate with Simon, so to speak?
Well, maybe we like take out D0. When we leave D0 there, and like Simon, when he goes into the simulation, he defines like the P0 and P1.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when he's defining P0, theta, and kappa, P1 is displayed. Oh yeah. I think that would work. And then what would be cool would be like, okay, so now he's got his parameters set. Now he can donate to the curve, and he gets to say how much he donated. You know, like, and then now he's part of the hatch. So instead of just setting D0, he participates in a hatch.
But then, so that's already something interactive. That you mean?
Well, it's kind of interactive. I mean, it's not like he's going to actually use MetaMask.
No,
it's just like he sees a you know, okay, like kind of like a hatch screen. Like now this is the hatch. how much do you expect to be donated to the hatch? To start, and then and then and then the next screen would be, yay! You raised this much money in the hatch. This much was donated to the funding pool, and this much is went into the token bounding curve. It created this many tokens. It did all this, right? And then and then we say, would you like to buy into the open phase? And then you can buy tokens and see how many tokens you get. Or, well, I guess that's, and then maybe he can see a printout, or I'm not exactly sure.
But maybe we should slow down a little bit in the sense that how do we want Simon first to walk through? Because if we start asking him questions and like making it too interactive for him from the start, maybe that's already too complicated for him. Maybe first he wants to wants to be able to walk through like this predefined example that just tells him like this is the way it could work. So, for example, so it shows that bonding curve, and it says, okay, let's assume now you buy into that hatching phase for this amount. Now you will receive so many tokens, and maybe then it says, okay, now there's so much in the funding pool, and you have so many voting tokens, and then you can sort of make the bridge towards the proposals, for example, and you can say, okay, imagine there's like a proposal to do this. Now you can like put your tokens on like in the conviction voting, and then after this amount of time, this proposal will pass because these are the parameters for the something like that. So the first really just gets a walk through, and then if he says, yeah, I really like this idea, maybe then instead of going to one of these predefined examples, he can really click that stimulate button, and then maybe he just receives the same template as in the example, but then he can start changing to parameters, and then it just goes step by step, and then it's easy if he put in like crappy values, then we will get like a very weird looking simulation, and that doesn't look at all like his first example that he just was able to drive through.
Yeah, I think that's cool. That's a great idea. So basically, walk them through, and we define what the numbers are, and we should probably just have them match what we want the numbers to be, right? Or like what we're choosing, and so like, even for the first one, instead of just putting the numbers in, you just kind of have arrows. It's like, oh, you set the P0, you set the theta, you set the kappa, and then notice the P1 is changing. It changes when you change the kappa, and it's kind of like just like arrows, like when I don't know, like a paper, like that little Microsoft paperclip thing, that little guy.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, but I think already you're also already getting one step ahead in the sense that if it's really like an example, I would really show. Would be my suggestion to really say, okay, you have this like the hatch price and the theta and the kappa. They're all being predefined because you're looking at the preference or the preferred simulation or predefined simulation. Sorry. So that's all fixed, so it also can just pull up the pre-calculated value. So there's also no weighting involved. It's more like a read-only version, so you can see, okay, this is the curve, and then like the next step in that simulation is you buy in with, let's say, 10,000 X into that curve, and now you receive these many tokens, and then you go to the voting or to the proposals page, and you see one proposal and up. So all these different steps until like a proposal is passed and it's paid out, for example. That could be the end of the journey, for example.
I think that sounds great. We predefine these things, and I kind of like he has to click next, and then one thing happens. Like you click next, and he sees the P0 is defined. He clicks next, and then the theta is defined. He clicks next, and the kappa is defined. And then he clicks next, and there's an arrow pointing to notice the opening price, will change if you change any of these other factors. And then he clicks next, and then he sees, okay, now it's ready for hatch. How much is going to be in the hatch is defined as, $1 million. And then he clicks next, and he sees this is the curve printout. This is the price, and this is what will happen if someone buys 10 tokens, 100 tokens, 1,000 tokens. These are the prices.
Yeah, I totally agree on that
Here's-
approach. But can we maybe go through each of these screens, or try to go through each of these screens? So what needs to be done? The more specific we can flesh it out here, the closer we are to implementing it, I think.
Okay.
So simulation. So that's. So what does he see initially? Does he see already like a curve of that of the bonding curve with like predefined values, and can he click to say, or does it start like with sort of a blank page and says, okay, like next is that he fills in P0, theta, kappa, P1, and then next, and then he sees the token bonding curve appear. How detailed would you like it to be? And maybe Jeff, maybe that's something you can give your idea on, like how, I mean, to what extent do you want to drag the user into a little detail of this thing, or do we first in this predefined simulation, do we just want to give an overview, like given that you've chosen these and these and these values for all these parameters, and this will be the outcome, and that means that like this is the amount of tokens you'll be having, or this is the way the curve will look, and then like the next step is like if you buy into the curve with that amount, then you'll receive some of these tokens and so forth. How detailed do you want it to be, or is that a difficult question to answer out of the blue?
I mean, for this, if we are planning this POC, for users like Simon to understand, the inner workings of the common stack, which I mean, I think long term we're looking to obfuscate a lot of this stuff away from the user. We don't want them necessarily to be looking at the bonding curve, the parameters of the bonding curve, everything like that. For this POC and for the people that we are trying to communicate the common stack to at this point, I think it's good to provide all of this information for sure. Actually, I'm just looking for. I think Band Protocol has a pretty good interface for a bonding curve. I think I have a link somewhere here, but I'll try to find it after. Just as far as like what information is relevant, and I think Griff had a really good idea where we walk through these parameters like screen by screen, a quick definition, and then show them the initial configuration, and then the parameters can be tweaked. Now, how the bonding curve is displayed, I think will probably need a bit of explanation all on its own. And then that's, we're looking at this like price to reserve, the price to supply curve, which most people are looking at. So that might require a little bit of explanation as well. That it looks potentially quadratic, and we need to explain to people that this does not make it, a Ponzi scheme, like a lot of people kind of look at these curves. But I do think it would be good for this initial audience to show how that looks and display at least all of that relevant information, even though it will probably be too much for an end user. But for this audience, I think it's good that they have as much of that as possible.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can find the band. protocol. Are you leaving? Okay, I gotta run for 1 second. I'm just gonna say bye to a couple of friends here, and I will be right back.
Okay. Yeah, I remember using some JavaScript library that exactly, I think, does what we want to have here, in the sense that you can like put an overlay on all input fields and buttons that you want to have, which sort of highlights that thing and explains what it is. And then you can really sort of script it to say like, okay, if you I remake it clickable, so if you click on this parameter, that like a pop-up appears explaining what it is. But you can also even like put it in a script with like next, 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 so you can just show that screen maybe with all these parameters on one screen, and then say like, something like, explain this to me, and then it goes from one parameter to the other, and then you can just put like an explanation on that. But I think if we can implement it already, like put it all on one screen, I think like several people could help us out, providing the right explanation on each field or on each value, that sort of tells that specific story.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's cool. I'm glad that there's already something you have experience with that we might be able to just pull out and utilize.
Mm. So I'll explain that here, so he sees. Explain this. I just gotta call it like this. It's a new button. When it clicks, appears.
Papá, dulce.
I'm calling these. I'm giving these screens numbers. I hope that's okay.
Yeah, that's good.
Papá, cheia de groene doos.
I would also sort of cut it into different episodes depending on the sort of the screen we're on or like the block of functionality. So I think it's interesting, or it might be interesting now to say, okay, so he clicks on one of these predefined examples. So the first thing it sees is like a simulation of the bonding curve. So he has some pre-filled parameters, which you're describing here. And then he has like this overlay explainers telling him what this parameter means and also why this value was chosen like this in his beautiful graffiti comments. And then so he can sort of skim through all that information, and then he can click on the next button, which says go to the next step in the simulation, and then he goes to the proposals, right? And then so that's sort of part two in that simulations, and then you can talk about how all these proposals looks like. So first you see the summary of the token bonding curve, which is voting balance and so forth. And then he sees a screen with a list of some of these predefined proposals. But I would sort of draw a line between that first part in the simulation, like the bonding curve, and the second one, which is like Simon takes a look at the proposals. And then it's easy also to sort of make a cutoff what functionalities or what user stories need to be built to build that first thing. Otherwise, it will be like one continuous flow of things, which will never be more difficult to end. If you cut it into smaller chunks, then it's easy to say, okay, this is implemented, this is all already useful or usable, and then up to the next.
Yeah, that sounds good.
All right. Do you think you're done with these several like screens that you are listing up in that first episode?
Almost. There's gonna be the buy, and then like I kind of see it like
Sure.
4.4 is like list of token prices for various numbers of tokens, and then it would be like the same thing with like showing that the price goes up. I don't think we need to show the price goes down. It's kind of obvious that something similar would happen. There's also got to be some, I guess. Yeah, actually, I guess it'd be good. We need to somehow show that the hash tokens are locked.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah.
So we can do the sell.
Okay, sorry guys. So I see we've got these laid out into a couple different episodes now. Are we all just hacking away on, or we're working on episode 1?
Yeah, so my suggestion there, Jeff, was to sort of create a draw a line under that first part of the simulation. So that first part would be everything that concerns the token bonding curve. And then so when he saw all that information and went through it, like with all these bullet points that Griff is listing here, then he says, okay, like now he goes to the next step in the simulation, being the proposals, and then we skip to episode 2, and then it becomes pretty or easier to say, okay, like episode 1 is finished, you know, then if everything from that first screen, then we know we're done, and we can just start with like episode number 2, which is showing him a list of proposals, and then a few steps in there to say, okay, if he adds his tokens to it, then this will happen, and so forth.
Perfect.
And so it could even be that episode 3 will become episode 4, and maybe we can sort of high level go through. So if Simon takes a look at the proposals and sees like this list of predefined proposals, what steps do we want him to see at that level? And is there like any third episode that describes more functionality? I would say no, unless Jeff, you say like there's still another part in there.
In between looking at the proposals and starting up his own simulation?
Yeah, so I think when he sees proposals and he sees the dynamics of doing a conviction voting, are we then like full circle in what we want to create in the POC in the end, or is there still more to it?
I mean, I suppose, how the initial conviction voting, like CAD model, yeah, tokens are allocated, proposals are passed, and then I don't think there will be too much of the sort of like milestone escrow in our initial CAD model.
Yeah, I'd agree. I don't.
That will be like next. That's kind of like, proposal is passed. Now work is getting done. I don't think there's going to be too much next steps, at least in this POC.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
So what will you see?
Yeah, I would agree with like we walk them through token bonding curve, walk them through conviction voting, and then it's go ahead and play.
Yeah. So what does he see? The first is the summary of the token bonding curve. So it's whatever is the output from the first screen, and on this screen he also sees a list of predefined proposals for the Gravity Commons. We can view these proposals. Does he sees the price of the token? Is that still relevant here?
No, I don't think price of the token is relevant when we're voting with it. I think it's more the weight of that vote growing over time according to our conviction voting decay curve. So he can perhaps see, how holding his vote longer towards a preference will give more weight to that proposal.
Yeah. So let's say Simon takes a look.
Yeah. I guess a question is, are we going to show these, and maybe this is a question for Zargam, can agents within conviction voting see where preferences are allocated for proposals? or would that just encourage vote memeing? You know, the ones that have the most. I mean, I suppose that's a useful signal to know what your community is looking to pass in terms of proposals.
Yeah, 100%. They should be able to see. I mean, that's a huge part of the system, is that you can see how close everything is to being passed, so you can allocate appropriately.
Yeah.
And in this simulation, are we going to showing, for example, 2 steps in time in that thing? So let's imagine like the most trivial case you could do is that there's only one proposal in that simulation. And do we show something like, okay, on time 0, this is a situation, so there's no conviction built up for this thing. The threshold for this thing is that much because the amount requested is so much, and like the available money in the pool is like that, and so forth. So these parameters. And then we say, so this is time 0, and then at time 0, some tokens are staked. Probably the output of these tokens that are bought into the curve in the beginning. And then we show time like on time 1, which is like 2 days later or 2 hours later, whatever we want to put in that simulation. The conviction looks like this. And then we show a second graph, like, and then maybe on time 3, we see that the threshold has passed, and then the money is sent to that proposal. Or is that too rough?
I guess, yeah. I'm curious how many time steps. I mean, I suppose we could give a few, 3 or 4 time step example, and then summarize it perhaps with like the graph. So I find that's maybe an easier way to show that conviction is in a graph based on time and conviction growing. So you just see the weight growing over time rather than breaking it up into discrete time steps. But I mean, that probably wouldn't hurt to say, okay, at time 0, proposals have no tokens asserted. Simon decides this is a valuable proposal and stakes tokens. Therefore, at time 0, there are X tokens staked. And then, time step 1, it's this amount. Time step 2, it's this amount. Time step 3, it's this amount. This can be summarized in this graph where you see conviction, where you see Simon's conviction growing. And then maybe the next step is, there's a whole community of people voting on this proposal. So you can see the conviction adding up from all of these various people asserting preference.
Yeah, okay, but so going like dialing back a little bit in the complexity, would it make sense to first show like like the graph, but then it will really start to look like that initial simulation thing in React that I created in the beginning, that it just shows like this graph of just one proposal and then like a few things that are added up, and maybe even make it even more simple, that you say like there's one proposal, so something pretty simple, not a lot of money percentage wise from the whole pool is asked for. Just Simon with his tokens that he just bought in the episode 1, just puts them on the proposal, and you see that conviction grow over time. Very simple. It's not even necessary that someone else also puts his voting tokens on there, because like after like a few hours this proposal passes, because it's like something trivial, like buy a new spray can for his graffiti piece of art thing, I don't know. So it's something very simple. It's almost a hello world of conviction voting, just to explain the system. And then maybe in a second simulation, we can do it more complex and say, okay, like in this simulation, it's like we show 3 different, same thing, like 3 different time steps. Like one is at time 0, one somewhere in between, and then you can say like, okay, like in the meantime, already like 15 people of these commons have voted, and then you see the conviction go up and then maybe even go down because people withdrew their votes. And then just show a more complex example, or
Yeah.
and then you could do it like you could step it up one step at a time, because I think if we start creating a pretty complex example with like 15 people voting as a first thing, it might obfuscate the actual workings of that conviction conviction formula, so to speak. That's one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it is that we say like, yeah, people who are already that far that they come to the simulation, they grasp the basic understandings of the conviction voting curve, and it's fine to already show them a less than trivial example.
Right.
It would be more like a question. So what do you think? I think it's the simplest way to explain to everybody, of course, is to start with the Hello World example, and then step up from there
No,
to
I
like
agree.
a more complex example. And then maybe we can
Definitely.
just say like, let's create two predefined simulations. One is really the Hello World of the common stacks, so to speak, and the second one is a more like elaborate example, and then step 3 is do your own simulation.
So are we still in? Simon is still looking at the predetermined example before he is using this for his graffiti commons.
Come again?
Sorry, I'm just taking some notes on what we were saying. So this is the first proposal, a very simple proposal. For example, to buy a spray paint can for his graffiti commons. It's a low cost, low conviction required proposal. So do we do the time step 1, time step 2, time step 3 proposal passed kind of scenario?
Yeah, I think that would work. The only question there would, of course, be if you want to simulate it in a later stage, how are we going to go along with simulating different steps? Because depending on the situation, it will be so that you cannot. At a certain point, you'll have to define like how many steps of the like in time do you want to see, because you're obviously not gonna wait for time to pass when running a simulation. You just want to see like fast forward the time. But like interesting things will happen at certain intervals in time, and you probably don't know beforehand what interesting time intervals you would want to look at. You know?
Yeah,
But
I agree with that.
just disregard that remark in the sense that if it's that predefined simulation, we can just show the time intervals that are interesting for us to show, and then let's sort of push forward that's the problem that we want to solve in that interactive simulation to the point where we arrive there. So I would assume now that there's like, let's say there are three steps that we see. So like one is time 0, one is time when it started, and then time 3 would be the moment that his proposal passes, and that he sees that the money's been paid out to that proposal. I think that makes sense to show the different states where it can be in.
Right.
And on this proposals one, we never really talked about where we set the parameters. Should we like for alpha and I mean obviously they'll be predefined, but like do we want to set them in episode 1 or in episode 2?
For the proposals you're saying?
Yeah, like how much what is alpha and what is beta, and like basically the variables that set the,
Yeah, I would put them in episode 2 actually, because that really sort of introduces the idea of conviction voting.
Yeah.
So I would explain it there, because if you're also going to explain it in episode 1, I think it's sort of
it's too much.
might confuse people.
I would agree. And so that should probably be like the first screen, kind of similar to episode 1,
Mm.
or this, I guess the second screen.
Yeah.
Nie?
Maybe also on the screen he also sees one or a predefined proposal for the Graffiti Commons. So we're just starting with sort of the Hello World version of it. So then we can see this this proposal. And this goes here. Oops. Guess this for the one. Yeah, so this is a very simple proposal because it's a low cost proposal which requires low conviction. It takes X% of its preference. Mm-hmm. So you see it's 3 times in the simulation that show him his vote weight growing over time, the overall community conviction growing over time. Yeah, we're not going to show that actually. Yeah, it's
No.
first one. Yeah, I would say it's just his vote going over time, the decay curve, and then maybe his the thresholds conviction required to pass this proposal. Yeah, so that's what he sees at time 0. Eh? Yeah,
Yep.
so that's what he sees regardless of the time, because of the thresholds,
Right.
given that that nothing else changes in the system, is a fixed value. So, but he can see that at time 0. So at time 0, he sees a graph showing the initial state conviction equals 0, and then at time 1 Simon sees that to his stake of votes. The conviction has grown to, let's say, 50% required. If you take that time interval at time 2, Simon sees that the threshold has how you say it has how do you say that in English? If you say the threshold has passed or has been reached?
Or has been passed. Reached, yeah. Reached is good.
Has been reached, sorry.
Yeah.
And so when it's reached, then actually Simon still needs to sort of pull the trigger to release the funds, right? Because that doesn't happen automatically. Or do we want that to happen automatically?
So I guess that wouldn't yeah, I guess that would be Simon if it's Simon's proposal. But I think that's getting into the next kind of like where I think at this point we just say, the proposal has passed.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know that we will be going into like bothering clicking yes, collect funds, because I don't believe that will be part of the POC as we've at least the initial way we're looking to do this. So I don't know that we need to go other than narrative. We can say now that the proposal has passed, funds can be released, funding pool to carry out this proposal. But I don't think we need to go into how that happens and what buttons need to be clicked and by who, because that's getting into much deeper user stories.
Yeah.
Like who is the proposer and who is, all that kind of stuff.
And it should be that once the threshold, anyone can push the button. Or in fact, maybe there's some incentive for someone.
Yeah, maybe Simon sees that someone has sort of like pulled the lever or something, or has requested.
There could be, we might end up putting a bounty of some token or something, because maybe that's like part of the proposal piece. Like what they do is they say you have to put in a 10 ether deposit and you get 9.9 back, and 0.1 or sorry, yeah, 0.1 goes to the guy who pushes the button to pass the proposal.
And then, so I should say, like, because the thing is here that he asked to for funds to buy a spray paint can.
For this simulation, we should just forget about it and take it out of scope, because we don't know what we'll do, but.
Yeah, so but the end of the story here is that Simon sees that someone is so somehow that there's a payout that's done through this proposal, and he can now go out and buy a spray can because he has the funding now to do so.
I mean, perhaps we can just kind of on the UI side, like show funding being removed from the funding pool and being put into a proposal fund. I mean, we don't necessarily have to go into the detail of how that is approved and transferred and everything, but I feel like that would be a gratifying thing in this example for our users who are playing with this to see, okay, proposal passed, look at that, funds decrease from the funding pool and fill up this, proposal bucket. I don't know. Is that something we can do without getting too deep into those mechanisms of how that works? We just
Yeah,
say proposal passed, or allocate.
yeah, I think so. I
Might
mean,
give people that.
and
Yeah.
and the proposal probably shouldn't be to Simon because Simon didn't make the proposal, or like
Right.
we didn't show him making the proposal. It should be to, some awesome graffiti artist that, needs some spray paint to implement his design. He wants to spray paint those on the White House or something.
Yeah. So yes, I still think that Simon needs to be sort of the hero still in this story because he's the one who experienced success because his proposal gets passed. But I think it's fine that his funds are sort of sent to a third party, like which would be that graffiti artist, which is now enabled to do whatever he wants to do.
The challenge that I have there is he didn't make the proposal. Well, you didn't show him making the proposal. It's like it seems like it's a proposal that that he came into and saw.
I guess the question is, how much do we want to separate those two user stories? So when Simon first comes into this new economy, he's first participating as a supporter or donor. And then maybe he realizes that this is a useful thing that he can support and donate, but now he can also use this same mechanism for something that he cares about. So I guess that's the question. Is the first one the hello world? This is just like purely interacting with the system as an outsider, as a speculator. And then the second example is him going in creating his own proposal, or do we think we can lump those together without getting too complex?
Well, I mean, maybe we're getting too complex with the storyline anyway, since it's kind of a simulation, right? Like,
Yeah, I would also propose that. I mean, maybe it's just like because we said here in episode 2, like he sees a predefined proposal for the graphic commons. Maybe we just to specify that, then he sees like, there's a request from this graffiti artist that wants to buy a spray can for his thing, and then actually Simon supports that, and that's why he uses his own tokens to support his proposal. So it's not Simon who makes a proposal; he just comes to that proposal list and he sees like, there's something going on there, and he just the user story or the storyline is that he just supports it, and we don't have to explain that Simon also creates a proposal and so forth. So his only role is like a supporter of that common. So first he buys into the bonding curve, and he gets some voting power. Then he goes to the proposal, which is from some third party guy, let's say.
yeah,
And then he just that's his role. He just supports it, and then he sees by just like putting his voting tokens on there, it immediately passes because it's like a low friction thing, and then it just works. Maybe that
Yeah.
should be that's the most simple story, because then we don't have to involve Simon in creating a proposal or anything.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's definitely the way to go. And people don't need to see how to submit proposal. Like, that's just not interesting to almost anyone.
Yeah, just gonna change these places here. So on the screen, you also see the predefined proposal for the graphic commons. This is a very simple proposal to buy us. So a guy, and then maybe we can elaborate on that a little bit. So a guy wants funds to buy a spray paint can for his graffiti work, let's say, something artwork. This is a very low cost proposal, quite a conviction. Simon stakes. Simon likes the idea and stakes X% of his preference towards the proposal. Yeah, I think that could be it. Yeah, so this is also something we can remove, I guess.
Yeah.
And then Simon sees 3 time steps in simulation, so he's usually, and it shows that time 0 sees the graph, initial conviction 0. Due to the state, conviction has grown, and at time 2, the threshold has been reached, proposal has been passed. Simon sees that someone is. Yeah, I also gonna skip this out of it. So he sees now the proposal has been filled up. Not being filled up is filled up, has been filled up with funds from a funding pool. And then the sort of the victory here is that Simon has successfully supported graffiti comments. Oops. Something like that.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, I almost need to hop off the call, I guess. We have dinner here.
Oh yeah.
How about I try to start extracting tangible user stories from this first episode? Maybe I can just throw them somewhere on a GitHub repo, and then maybe. Is there a specific form that we need for the bindings guys, or because if you put it in GitHub issues, then it also opens the possibility to allocate Git coin funding to it? What's your idea on that, Rick?
Yeah, I think following that pattern of Gitcoin issues that you already did is probably the best way to go for sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, how about I try to create some of these like first issues and then share them with you as I'm making them, and then you can give your feedback on them to see if it's elaborate enough.
Yeah,
That'd be
that
awesome.
sounds good. Yeah, that'd be amazing, dude. I mean, I think this was a really awesome video or whatever chat that we had.
Yeah, now it's also really tangible, I guess. And also, I think the interesting part now is that this sort of story in these episodes is also something we can show to other developers, and they just have to read through, and then they get an understanding like, okay, this is the game plan, and then they can just switch in, and then they can have a look at the GitHub issues and say, okay, yeah, this is related to that issue.
Yeah, exactly. And they can see the whole picture, and they can also understand the scope, which I didn't even understand until we had this call. Because I mean, just changing the scope from, or not changing it, but like specifying the scope of, we're showing people that they can simulate with CAD as opposed to, just like, this is what we're building. It's like, this is what you can build with the tools that we're going to perfect. Like, that's really sexy.
Yeah, it's true. All right, perfect, guys. So maybe we can wrap it up here.
Yep.
For the next steps, I'll be traveling tomorrow, and then I have this wedding going on, so probably it will not be for the next days that I can work on this. But
maybe
I'll see
around
what I
next
can
week
do.
this time we can touch base and maybe do another look into maybe the next couple episodes, and I'll keep thinking about ways we can break down simply preference accumulating, preference decaying we'll have to show, and then also aggregating community preference. So I've got some thoughts on next episodes, and next week this time might be good, or later next week anyway, would be a good time to go through some next steps on this.
Yeah, can we say like same day, same time next week, the 10th.
Yeah,
Uh,
that works for me.
if everybody's calendar is open, I can throw in another meeting invite.
Oh wait,
Yeah.
let me see. What next week is the 10th.
Mhm.
I'll be on East Coast
Yeah.
time, so but yeah, this will work.
Cool. All right. I'll throw in an invite right now. So we've got it in the calendar.
Great.
Hey, thanks, Jeff.
Perfect. All right. We'll talk to you guys again soon.
Yep.
All right.
See you
Thanks, guys.
Enjoy your dinner, Spot.
Bye-bye. Yeah,
See you.
thanks.
See ya.
Bye-bye.